Millionaire CEO throws his newborn twins into the river. But what the German shepherd does next? The rain came down in sheets, drenching the quiet town of Missoula in cold and darkness. Thunder cracked like splitting trees overhead, and lightning threw pale streaks across the night sky. Wind howled through the narrow streets, rattling windows and bending trees, as if nature itself was screaming out a warning in a modest wooden house tucked near the river's edge. The old German shepherd, named Max, stirred from slumber. His graying muzzle twitched, ears slowly rising. For a moment he stayed still, his body stiff as though listening to something beyond the walls of the house. The storm was loud, but not loud enough to cover the faintest of sounds. Sounds that only a dog like Max could hear. Somewhere in the distance, beyond the yard, beyond the rain, something small and alive was crying. A low growl rumbled from Max's throat. He stood, stiff from age, joints aching from years of loyal service. Martha, the elderly widow who had saved him long ago from the side of the highway, slept soundly in her room, unaware. Max glanced once toward her door, then toward the window, his body suddenly tense. He pushed his way out through the kitchen dog door, his thick fur quickly soaked by the freezing rain. The storm lashed at him from every direction, but Max pressed forward, his instincts flaring like fire. He made his way to the wooden fence that bordered the backyard, now slick with rain. Without hesitation, he jumped, more of a climb than a leap now, but determined nonetheless, and landed heavily on the muddy grass beyond. Lightning flashed again, illuminating the path toward the river. Max sniffed the air, then broke into a slow, steady run, his paws splashing through puddles and soft earth. His breathing was heavy, but purposeful. He was not sure what he was chasing, only that something needed him. As he approached the riverbank, he stopped, his ears perked fully. There it was again, a soft, desperate sound, so easy missed, so easy to ignore by human ears, but not by Max. It was the high-pitched wail of a baby. No, too. Babies faint, frightened, and growing, weaker by the second. Another lightning strike cut across the sky, and in that brief moment of clarity, Max saw it. A large plastic container bobbing in the waves near the edge of the swollen river. It was pale blue in half, submerged, barely holding above the current. The lid was half open, and inside, just barely visible, two tiny bundles wrapped in soaked white cloth. The cries came from there, muffled and desperate. Max barked sharply, a sound that was immediately drowned by the thunder. No one heard him. No one would come. He looked at the river. The current was fierce, pulling the container further with each second. The shore was slippery, steep, and the water cold enough to stop most animals dead in their tracks. But not Max. Without a moment's pause, he lunged forward and plunged into the icy water. The cold struck him like a wall. His limbs flailed, his lungs burned, but he forced himself forward. Each stroke was a fight. Each wave tried to pull him under, but the cries kept him moving. The cries told him this mattered more than pain, more than fear, more than age. He reached the container. He bit down on the wet edge of the blanket, careful not to harm the small form within. With aching muscles and fading strength, he turned back, dragging the precious bundle toward the bank, knowing he would have to return again for the second. But Max did not stop to think. He simply swam. Victor Chamberlain had built an empire from the ground up. To the outside world, he was the embodiment of success. Handsome, articulate, philanthropic. He was a founder and chief executive officer of one of the most influential private equity firms in the state, and he had just launched his campaign for governor. Every billboard bore his carefully curated smile. Every interview polished his image as a man of vision, leadership, and moral strength. But behind that perfect image lay secrets buried deep beneath the surface. Months earlier, Victor had engaged in a quiet affair with Emily, a young housekeeper hired to maintain his mountain estate during the winters. She was naive and starried, unaware of the political machine that churned behind the mansion walls. When she found out she was pregnant, she cried alone in the staff quarters. When she gave birth to twins in secret, Victor's reaction was not joy, it was fear. He did not see babies. He saw headlines, scandal, collapse. He offered Emily a large sum of money to disappear. She took it, too, frightened to fight, and left him with the newborns. Victor told himself it was only temporary, that he would figure something out. But the longer he looked at the infants, the louder his panic grew. What would the world say if they knew? What would his wife do? His campaign donors? His board? So he made a decision. It was a cold and violent night. Rain slammed against the windshield as Victor drove along the winding roads to the river outside Missoula. The storm was in full fury. Thunder rolled above, matching the rhythm of his own inner unrest. In the back seat of his car, a large plastic storage container sat open. Inside, he had laid soft towels and white cotton blankets, wrapping the newborns tightly. They were not crying now, just breathing quietly, their faces calm, trusting. Victor stared at them for a long time. He had even drilled small holes into the sides of the container. He told himself it was for air to give them a chance. But deep down he knew the holes were not for the babies. They were for his own guilt, a trick to make him feel less monstrous. At the river's edge, he stepped out of the car, carrying the container carefully, almost tenderly. The rain soaked through his coat. The water before him was swollen and fast, moving. He whispered almost to himself, "This is the only way." Then he lowered the container into the river and gave it a push. It floated for a second, catching in the reeds. Then the current took it. Slowly, steadily, it drifted away, swallowed by the storm and night. Victor stood there for a moment, drenched and still. His face was stone, but his hands trembled. He turned and walked back to the car, never once looking back. What he did not know, what he could not have known, was that behind a fence, watching through the blur of rain, stood an old German shepherd with eyes sharp and ears alert. Max had seen it all. The river was alive with fury. It thrashed against its banks, swollen by rain and choked with debris. Waves curled like claws, reaching for anything that dared touch the surface. But Max was already in. His body plunged beneath the freezing water, the shock cutting through him like knives. He fought against the current, with desperate strokes, paddling harder than he had in years. His legs strained, his chest burned, and his vision blurred with cold and instinct. But the sound was still there, the crying, faint, fractured, urgent. Lightning split the sky above, and for a brief second, Max caught sight of the plastic container. It bobbed on its side, partially submerged, spinning slowly in the current. One corner of the lid had come loose, and the contents inside were shifting dangerously. As another gust of wind screamed overhead, the container tilted sharply. A small, pale arm reached through the gap in the blanket. The baby was slipping out. Max surged forward, his body propelled by instinct, stronger than any pain. He reached the side of the container just as it listed. Again, the edge of the blanket had soaked through hanging like a rope. Max snapped at it with his jaws, locking his teeth onto the cloth. His paws churned. The water, the container rocked beside him, then caught in a cluster of tangled reeds. He pulled hard. His muscles screamed in protest. Every nerve in his body cried out, but he did not let go. Inch by inch, he dragged the bundle toward shore. The baby was silent now, wrapped tightly, eyes closed, but breathing barely. Max's front legs found the riverbed. He clawed his way up the muddy slope, dragging the soaked blanket with him. When he reached a patch of grass beyond the bank, he collapsed beside the infant, his body trembling uncontrollably. His breath came in wet, shallow gasps. Blood ran from his gums, where the cloth had torn at his teeth. One eye closed against the rain. He had nothing left. Then the second cry pierced the air, weak, broken, but real. Max raised his head. The other baby was still in the river. The container had broken loose from the reeds and was drifting further downstream, spinning as it went through the storm. Max could barely make out the second shape inside. Smaller, bundled tighter, but still there. He pushed himself up. His legs buckled. His chest heaved, but he did not stay down. The pain in his limbs was blinding, but the sound in his ears was louder. That tiny voice calling into the dark. He limped back into the water. Every step was agony. The current dragged at his body like claws. But Max did not stop. He moved on memory and love, driven by something older than fear. He reached the container a second time, now almost fully submerged. The opening had widened. A scrap of cloth floated free like a lifeline. Max bit down again. This time the fight was longer. He lost his grip once. Then, again he circled, repositioned, bit harder. He turned for shore, and with a final surge of strength that came from somewhere far beyond his broken body, he began to swim. He did not feel the rocks under his feet when he reached the edge. He did not feel the blood in his mouth or the rain in his eyes. He only felt the warmth of the second baby's body against his own as he pulled the bundle onto the grass. And then he collapsed. Max fell beside the two infants, his chest rising and falling in shudders. He could no longer lift his head. His eyes fluttered open once, saw the babies breathing beside him, then closed, and then footsteps beneath the roar of rain. And when came the frantic cry of an old woman, Max, Martha. She had awakened when she realized Max was gone. She had followed his tracks barefoot through the storm. Now she saw him. Her heart nearly stopped. There he was, her beloved Max, lying soaked and bloody on the riverbank, and beside him two tiny babies, trembling and alive. She fell to her knees with a scream. "Oh, my God! Oh, my God!" She pulled the infants into her arms, holding them close to her chest, feeling their shallow breaths. She looked down at Max, tears mixing with the rain on her face. "You did this," she whispered. "You beautiful, brave boy. You saved them." Max let out a faint whimpering sigh. He did not move, but his tail thumped once against the grass. He had heard her. In the months that followed the storm, the house by the river changed. Martha had never intended to become a mother again. She had buried her only son decades earlier, a soldier lost in a foreign war, and since then she had grown used to silence. But the two babies Max had rescued filled that silence with life. She named them Lily and Luke. The hospital confirmed they were healthy, though malnourished and cold when brought in. No relatives came forward. No records existed. So the court granted Martha custody, and with trembling hands and torled eyes, She signed the papers that made them hers. Max, meanwhile, was slow to recover. The cold river had taken a toll on his aging body. He limped more than before. One ear drooped permanently, and the scar along his jaw never quite faded. But he lived, and more than that, he remained. Every night, Max lay between the two cribs. Every morning, he waited by the nursery door. He was no longer the guardian of just a home. He was a guardian of a family. 3 years passed. The little house was no longer quiet. It was full of noise, baby giggles, soft lullabies, the clink of plates at dinner time, and the soft thump of Max's tail against the wooden floor. Martha would often glance down during meals and see him there, resting beneath the table, his head beside the children's swinging feet. And each time her heart swelled with the kind of gratitude words could never express. Then one day, the past, returned a retired nurse volunteering at the local shelter had seen a news clip about Max's rescue 3 years prior. She remembered the night clearly. The 2 soaked infants brought in by an elderly woman. The story of a dog who saved them from a river. She had always wondered what became of those children. She contacted the authorities. A quiet investigation was launched. DNA samples were taken from Lily and Luke with Martha's consent. Weeks later, results confirmed their biological parents, Victor Chamberlain and Emily Rios. The story spread like wildfire. Headlines screamed, gubernatorial candidate fathered and abandoned twins. Victor tried to deny it, but the DNA was irrefutable. Under pressure, Emily came forward and confessed. She had accepted money to disappear, knowing Victor intended to take care of things in his own way. Public outrage was swift. Victor was arrested and charged with child endangerment and abandonment. The court sentenced him to 5 years of supervised probation and ordered him to donate $1 million to a statewide fund for abandoned and orphaned children. Emily was not imprisoned, but the court banned her from working in any environment involving children and forced her to deliver a public apology. Reporters swarmed Martha's house for weeks, but she kept the children protected. When asked for a statement, she declined. But during a televised interview with Lily, now 6, a journalist asked, "Do you ever wonder about your real family?" Lily did not hesitate. "Our real family is not who gave birth to us," she said, softly, her small hand resting on Max's graying back. "It is who saved us." Time had taken its toll. He was thinner, pale, and walked with effort. The public disgrace had ended his career, and illness had dimmed his pride. He was no longer a man of power, only a man hollowed out by guilt. He stood at the front steps for a long moment, then knocked. The door opened. Martha did not speak. She looked at him as if peering through a ghost, but she did not stop. The 2 children behind her, Lily and Luke, stepped outside, each now tall, strong, and composed. Between them walked Max. He was nearly blind in one eye. His muzzle was white, his legs stiff with age. His steps were slow, deliberate, but when he saw Victor, he moved to stand between the children and the man on the porch. His ears flattened, his body lowered slightly, and from deep within his chest came a low, steady growl. Victor froze. He raised his hand slowly as if reaching for something long lost. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry," he said. His voice trembled. "I think about you every day. I was a coward. I thought maybe I could still be part of your life." Silence. Luke stepped forward, his voice steady. "You left us in a box," he said. He stayed beside us every night. Victor's eyes wailed with tears. His hand dropped. No, one moved to embrace him. After a long pause, Victor gave a slight nod. Then he turned, stepped off the porch, and walked slowly back to the car. No one followed. The next morning was unusually warm for autumn. The sun painted long golden rays across the field behind the house. Max lay curled on the porch, his head resting gently on his paws. His breathing was slower now, quieter, but steady. Lily sat beside him with a book, her hand gently stroking his back. Luke leaned against the railing, watching the trees sway in the wind. A small stone marker had been placed at the corner of the porch. Carved into its face were simple words. Max, not just a dog, a guardian angel. And in that quiet moment, there was no doubt. He was home, he was loved, and he had fulfilled his purpose. Sometimes heroes do not wear uniforms or speak words. Sometimes they walk on four legs with eyes full of loyalty and hearts stronger than steel. Max was not just a dog. He was a guardian, a protector, a silent promise that love can rise even from the darkest river. He saved 2 lives, not just with his strength, but with his unwavering devotion. And in doing so, he gave a broken woman a reason to live again and 2 abandoned children a real family. If this story touched your heart, we invite you to subscribe to USA Paws. Stories where real courage, compassion, and second chances are shared one paw, print at a time. Do not forget to like, share, and join us in the next unforgettable tale. Thank you for watching.